Hello WebDev Club members. I'm going to be doing another video for you today, and this one is going to be kind of casual. What we're going to be doing is redesigning our web development club site. I basically wanted to show you guys how I work, and I thought this would be a good example to just kind of show you how I do things. So let me start by showing you what we've got so far. Here we are with our club page. I did remove the header in the background here, the colored background, because I didn't like it. But there's a bunch of other changes I want to make too to kind of make this site a bit more appealing. You might also notice I moved the waitlist because we're not going to have a waitlist anymore. Our club is quite full and it's pretty hard to manage with as many members as we have already. So I think we're going to keep it right where it's at. I also removed a few people who have dropped the club. So those are just a few changes you might notice. Get a sip of drink here. Much better. Alright. So looking at the page, when I'm redesigning a web page, I look at a site the way I would want to see it. So right now, the first thing I notice is that I see this list of names. They're not very interactive. It's just a numbered list. It's just kind of boring. So what I would like to do is to take these names and change each of them into a box that when I hover it, it changes color, and it's just a bit more interactive than it is right now. I also want to ditch the numbers. So we're going to go over to our Sublime text editor. This is the text editor that I talked to a few of you about. It's called Sublime 2. It is not free, but you can use it as much as you want for free until you're ready to buy. I just wouldn't recommend using it if you're actually building a website for somebody. But since we're just doing this for fun, we're not charging any money for it, it's okay to use it. So I wanted to make each of our list items here a bit more interactive. So what I want to do is target each of those items, and I want to add a block style to them first, because the first thing I want to do is get them lined up in some nice blocks and just get rid of the boring look that it has right now. So let's look at what we have so far. We have our everything selector that selects everything, every standard CSS selector, and sets the margin and padding to 0. We have some stylings for our H1 header. We have some stylings for our main div, some stylings for our main ordered list and our main unordered list. We just gave it a margin bottom, and some stylings for any list item inside the main div. That's where I'm going to focus right now. So looking at that main list item, I see all we have right now is that the font is bold. So the first step I want to do is get rid of the numbers in the ordered list. And the way we do that is a property called list style. And that's one of the cool features of this text editor is you saw how it popped up like that. It'll do that to make your coding a little bit faster. So list style, I want to set that to none, which means I don't want any numbers, I don't want any bullets, I want nothing. And that looks something like this. So you'll notice we had all the numbers over here before, and now they are all gone. So that's step one. Now that that's done, I want to make each of these items a block. So let's do that. I want each list item to display differently, so I'm going to use the property display. And I could just use block, but I also want them to be inline, so I'm going to use inline block instead. And that just means instead of being vertical, they're going to be horizontal next to each other. So let's see what that looks like. So there's inline block. Now the block property by itself doesn't do anything. All it does is say this is now a block element. What we have to do is add some styling to that block to make it more apparent that it's an actual block instead of just a line of text. My throat's dry today, so you'll hear me sipping on my drink a lot. Okay, so let's see what we can do there. So our list item, I want to give it a height, oops, spelled height wrong, we'll say 50 pixels, we'll see how that looks, and a width of maybe 150, 3 times the height. Now let's see the difference that makes on our page. Okay, so it's different. Now you'll notice we can't really tell how big each individual block is. So let's give it a background and we'll see if that makes it a little bit easier to discern. We'll give it just we'll give it a black background because I know that's what I'm going to want eventually. Okay, there we go. So you'll notice three things. One, it's really hard to read, and that's okay because we're just messing around. It's not really important right now. Two, the items that are next to each other horizontally are spaced, but the ones that are on top of each other vertically are not. So we need to fix that. We need to add some margin and paddings of our own. I also noticed that one of our names down here is not quite fitting inside of the box. So I want to make our boxes a little bit bigger. So I'm going to put some space between the blocks, and I'm going to make our box a little bigger. So let's change it from 150 to 175, and let's add a margin to the top of each of our list items in the amount of 15 pixels. I kind of just pick these numbers out of the air, but you kind of get a feel for how big a few pixels are after you use them quite a few times. Much, much better. That's what I want to see. Okay, now I notice that our names, even though they're hard to read, they're not centered. So I want to use a margin to push down, or I'm going to use some padding to push down each name in the box down to the middle. And I'm going to use a property called text align to center it horizontally. So each list item, I want to give it a padding on the top of about, we know the box is about 50 pixels high. The font itself is about 12 pixels high. So I want to push it down to, we'll say 20 pixels. We'll see how that looks. And I also want to add text align center to center our text. There we go. So that's quite a bit of difference in just a few minutes of work. You'll notice that everything is separated, our text is in the middle, and it's starting to look cleaned up a little bit. You might also notice that each of our boxes got a little bit bigger, and that happens because when you add padding to something inside of a box, what it does is make the box bigger to accommodate that padding. There's actually a way to work around that, and it's a new property called box sizing. So we're going to add that. We're going to add box sizing, and we're going to change the box sizing to border box. And that just says that instead of making the box bigger when you add padding, it says make the available space inside the box smaller. And we have to add a few vendor prefixes for that to make it work in every browser. So box sizing will work in a few browsers, but we also need to add -moz for Mozilla, which is Firefox. Box sizing border box. And the other one is WebKit, which is like Safari and Opera, stuff like that. Actually, not Opera, I'm sorry. Opera has its own free prefix. But WebKit, box sizing, border, box. And with any luck, that has worked. There we go. Okay, so it changed the sizing, but now I see that I may have put too much padding on the top. So let's reduce that a bit. Change that to 15. There we go. So now that's looking almost exactly how I want it to. I'm going to go ahead and cut this video off here. This is going to be a two-parter video. So when we come back, we're going to be adding YouTube videos on the bottom of this. We will also be working on these boxes, finishing them up, making the colors nice, getting rid of the underline, adding some hovers, and finishing up our page. I'll see you in a minute.